Are you stuck in the comparison game? It's an easy trap to fall into. You see that person's post on social media and think to yourself, they seem to be able to do it all. There must be something wrong with me if I can't handle everything on my own. But what we often fail to notice is how much help successful people actually have. While I wouldn't put myself on the list of super successful people, I have been able to reach a lot of my goals throughout my life. And I sort of have it together, at least some of the time. So, in this episode, I'm taking you behind the scenes to show you where I have help in all areas of my life and how I'm getting more comfortable delegating and letting go of the small stuff. Okay, let's dive in. I talked back in episode 89 about how much I love Michelle Obama's book, Becoming. And one of the reasons that I love this book so much is she's really open with how much help she actually has every day. One of my favorite stories in that book, I shared back on episode 89 as well, is about how she gets really frustrated one day because she doesn't have the time to get to the gym and exercise like she always wanted to. And she starts feeling frustrated with herself, but also a little bit ticked off with Barack because he has time to exercise, but she doesn't because she's busy running her home and helping her daughters with school and doing all the things that we have on our to do list every day. And she talks about how she realized that we all have the same 24 hours in the day. And in order to find the time, she needed to make the time by getting help in some other areas. I love reading stories like this of especially successful women who share about how much help that they have. Because often in our modern world, we get this message that we should be able to do it all on our own. And I find women are particularly bad for this, but men get into this trap as well. We get into the comparison game and we see someone's perfect house on social media that is super clean and tidy and it looks like it could be in a magazine, and we feel like we should be able to do that too, or that we're not working hard enough if we aren't successful. And we get a lot of messages, like I said, about that through social media, traditional media, and through the people that we look to, where often folks present that picture of, oh, I just worked super hard and I was able to be successful. And if you just work super hard too, you can be as successful as me. I have nothing against hard work and determination, but I think this misses a big part of the picture, and that's that we all have the same 24 hours in the day. We can only do so much. And most very successful people have lots and lots and lots of help. Not just help with their businesses, their companies, or their job, but help in their personal lives as well. Help around the house, help with their kids, help with meal prep, vacation planning, all of those things. I know for myself, I can get into that habit of feeling like I should be able to do everything myself, especially when I'm stressed out. Then I want to take back all of that control, micromanage everything, or just start doing it all on my own. I started to fall back into this pattern before Christmas. Thankfully, my lovely spouse was there to correct me, and Jason pointed out to me that I was getting into this pattern. What had happened was that my clinical assistant quit somewhat unexpectedly. She got a great new job. I was very excited for her, but I was having to take a clear look to sit down and see what is actually on my list of things to do. What do I have to get done to run my business? What do I have to get done in my personal life? My business has a few different streams where I put effort into many different areas with my clinical practice, but also with my online coaching and consulting practice. So there's lots of tasks on the to-do list. And my first instinct was to say, I'm just going to do everything myself. I'm not going to hire anyone else. I'm just going to do all of my own clinical work. I'm going to do all my client work. I'm going to do all the paperwork. I'm going to do all the scheduling. Plus, I'm going to keep up with all of the things that I do, like my social media posts and these podcasts. And even in my head, I knew this probably wasn't the best strategy, but that was my go-to, right? Because my mental default is to feel like I should do it all on my own. And that's pretty common. It's hard for me to delegate, especially when I'm stressed. I want to slip back into those habits of perfectionism, feeling like I should do everything, taking control of everything. But I've been there before. And what it leads to for me and for most of us is burnout because we can't actually do everything. Thankfully, like I said, my husband was there to remind me, Nicole, a bunch of these tasks you're not actually that good at. And a bunch of these tasks you really don't like doing. So, what's going to happen if you start doing all of this stuff again? It was a good reality check for me. I did end up hiring someone else, working on training that person right now as I record this episode. And I'm very happy that I made that decision. One strategy that I do when I start to feel really overwhelmed with everything on my plate is the first thing I do is a big brain dump to get everything out. I write down everything that I need to get done. I did this when my clinical assistant left for her new job. Like I said, I opened up a spreadsheet. I wrote down all the different tasks I do in different areas. Because a lot of the time, we're doing more than we think we are. We're doing a lot of this stuff automatically without even really thinking about the effort that's going into these tasks. We're taking on a lot of extra mental load that we perhaps don't need to be doing by doing all of these different tasks. So that's my first step is I write down everything that I need to get done. So I know now I can take a look through this list, see what can I stop doing, at least for now? What can I delegate? Part of delegating for me, and I'd recommend this to anyone else as well, is part of delegating is making things automatic. Delegating doesn't have to mean making someone else do it or getting someone else to do it, because I know not all of us have that opportunity all of the time where other people can take on some of that load. But think about how many resources your brain has. The goal of delegating, whether it's to a person or you're making things more automatic or routine, is to reduce that mental load. All of that stuff that's taking up space, all of those decisions that we have to make every day, because when we start doing all of that ourselves, it becomes overwhelming and we feel burnt out, right? So, really, the goal of starting to delegate or getting more support or making things more automatic is to reduce that mental effort. So, keep that in mind as we go through some of these strategies. And I share some of the ways that I make things easier for myself and the ways that I get help in many areas of my life. For example, I use a lot of automation, and automation doesn't have to mean tech. For example, at work, I have templates for a lot of the things that I do. I have a template for reports that I write. I have a number of letter templates that I send out for clients with emails, with bookings, for example. So, whenever we have to do that task, rather than recreating the wheel or starting from scratch, I just pull out that template, copy, paste, change those couple of things that need to be specialized for that individual, and there we go. That makes that task much more automatic, takes a lot less mental resources for me, and that is a great way to delegate or get some help in your daily life, is to think about what can I make more automatic, whether it's using templates in any areas. I track a lot of my information. I have a lot of reminders set up as well. I have reminders at work for appointments, for example, calendar reminders. I use a project planning system that keeps track of all the steps that I need to do. I use a program called Asana, but there are many of them out there. For example, for these podcast episodes, I have a template of all the tasks that I need to get done, like come up with an idea, brainstorm some stories I want to share, make some points so that I don't get totally off track when I'm recording the episode, record the episode, make a title, make an image that we can use for the podcast, and so on and so on. And so I have a template for this set up in my project management software. So every time I record a new episode, I duplicate that and it keeps me on track so I don't forget any of those tasks. I use this at home as well. I, for example, have a reminder set in my calendar to pay my bills, so I'm not forgetting any of them. I have reminders set up for appointments that I have to go to. We have calendars that we use. I use routine in my daily life as part of my automation. For example, I meal plan every Sunday. Every Sunday, I sit down, I take out a little scrap of paper, I write a quick note of what we want to have for supper each day. Then I can make a grocery list based on that plan because I know what I'm going to need for the week. One of the things I love about this type of automation or routine in my daily life is it takes off some of that stress at the end of the day. Because I know when I come home from work, I'm tired, right? Don't have a lot of mental resources left over. And so sometimes it can be really frustrating when I'm hangry to decide what do we want to have for supper. If I know what we're going to make that day, either me or Jason can start that planning. Whoever gets home first can start the meal prep. So we have healthy meals, meals that are planned out, and that makes it a lot more efficient for my family. Automation and routine are great ways to get extra support. And I encourage you to find any way that you can make that work in your daily life. Another area that I'm really working on right now is delegating the mental load. I learned just recently that what I thought I was doing when I was delegating wasn't necessarily making life easier for me. For example, I would come up with really detailed plans or operating procedures for how we do things at work. And those are great. Those are great to have really specific steps that we do. And then I would give it to my clinical assistant and say, go do this. The problem is that I ended up putting a lot of work into that type of delegating. And if you've ever tried to delegate and felt like, oh my gosh, training someone to help out or delegating these tasks is just going to take more work than me doing it myself, that's exactly where I was, where I would make these detailed plans, I would give them instructions, and I would spend all this time training. And then whenever they had a question, they felt they needed to come back to me to ask that question because I hadn't actually delegated responsibility for that task. Here's another example. I used to ask my husband to do things like look into booking vacations for us or look into booking appointments for us. And he would come back to me with a million questions. How about this day? How about this thing? What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And so it would have been faster if I just did it myself. Been there before, right? So, what I am trying to do now when I delegate tasks is delegate the mental load. Delegate the decision making because that's what takes up a lot of your time and energy. Deciding what do we want to have for supper? What food do we need? What ingredients do we need? Where do we want to go on vacation? Do we want to stay in a hotel or with friends and family? All those mental decisions take up energy. So recently, I had much more success with this. I asked my husband to plan a trip to the mountains for a night for us to go skiing. And what I said is, I would like you to plan this trip. I trust your decisions on hotels, booking everything, etc. And he did it. I didn't have to make any decisions. So, one quick tip to keep in mind when you're delegating is, are you delegating the task and then micromanaging it? Because that's not actually delegating, it's going to take more work. Or are you delegating the decision making so you take off that mental load? I would encourage you to find ways to delegate the decisions. Here's some other things I delegate at home. A lot of cleaning, like I said, a lot of booking and appointments. I delegate some of our meal prep and planning as well. For many years, I always did our family grocery shopping. I really liked it. Right now, that doesn't really fit in my schedule, so I've delegated that task onto my husband. Doesn't always get the things that I would get, but what he gets works too. And that's the key component of delegating. Things I have help with at work. Oh my goodness, let me tell you, I have so much help in my job. Just for these podcast episodes, for example, I have two separate virtual assistants that help me. I have one virtual assistant that helps me edit all the audio, helps me upload the podcast to the internet, to the various podcasting platforms so you can be listening to it right now. I have another virtual assistant that helps me with editing all the video for our YouTube channel, helps me with creating images and posts for social media so we can talk about the episode and get the word out there. Tons of help. I have a clinical assistant, like I said, at work, who helps me with some of my client work, who helps me with booking and scheduling, who helps me with bookkeeping and sending out appointment notices and all of those extra things. Back 2 years ago, when I started my business, I was doing this all on my own. And let me tell you, I got burnt out really fast. And I'm finding that the more help I can get, both at home or at work, everything I can automate, make routine, or delegate saves me brain power and energy. So, How do you do this? How do you get started on reducing that mental load? Often I find that folks get held up. They say, Nicole, but I don't have a colleague, or I don't have an assistant, or I don't have a spouse or a family member that can take up some of this load. But like I mentioned throughout the episode, there are other ways to delegate and reduce some of that brain power, those brain resources that you're using for all of these tasks. Think about what can you automate or make routine? What decisions can you take off your brain so you're not having to do so much mental multitasking? Are there ways you can use templates, use schedules that you can pre-plan or prepare in advance, like planning your meals for the week or doing a bunch of chores all on the same day when you have time? Which ways can you make this more efficient for your life? The less decisions you have to make, the more resources you'll have left over to put your time, energy, and focus towards what really matters for you. Think about what else can you have someone do, even if it's not the perfect way or the way that you would do it. I joked that my husband gets our groceries now and he doesn't always buy what I would buy, but what he buys works too. And that's an important point of asking for help. Because often we start to delegate or ask for support, and that colleague or family member or whoever that's doing that task doesn't do it exactly the way that we would do it. And we start to pull that back. We say, okay, let's just do it my way. I'll do it myself, which is a bad long-term strategy, both for your health and for your productivity. Getting comfortable with someone else doing it so at least the task gets done is better than perfect. And also find ways that you can learn from others. You know, I'm a huge fan of learning. I love finding mentors, coaches, reading, courses, doing whatever I can to learn from other people's experiences because there are over 7 billion people on the planet. Chances are there's someone else out there that's gone through a really similar situation to what you have, and they've found success. They have found ways to seek out that support. And so, like I said, I love reading other stories of other women who have been learning to delegate and ask for support. I love taking courses on how to make my life more efficient and how to be better at delegating so I'm not actually micromanaging. And those are great strategies that you can use in your daily life as well. This episode is brought to you by my daily productivity checklist. Ever wished you had more time in your day? This free workbook will walk you through the steps that I use to set up my day for productivity so you can get more done without feeling totally overwhelmed or staying up all night to squeeze it all in. You can download your copy at drnicolebyers.com/checklist. That's drnicolebyers.com/checklist. Okay, let's do a quick recap of what you learned in this episode. We all have the same 24 hours in the day. Each task or decision that you make takes up energy and time. It's a myth that we have to do this all on our own. We have this idealized Hollywood image of the rags to riches story of that person that is able to be an amazing mom and keep their house in pristine shape and cook gourmet meals while also being a business mogul all on their own. And that's just not true. Successful people in all areas have a ton of help. If you're wanting to reach out for more support, to get more help to take things off your to-do list, start small. Delegating, automating, getting routine in place take practice. I encourage you to start by delegating one small decision or automating one small task. It might seem small, but the compound effects of that extra time, energy, and focus will add up. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Dr. Nicole Byers, and this is the Bold Life Podcast.